You know, I was thinking about the last time the three of us together, and it was for the State of the Union. And Secretary Holland, who's one of our wonderful colleagues, has a tradition of doing a selfie of the whole cabinet. It's one of the pictures I really treasure because that's a great picture of the cabinet that looks like America.
Mr. Speaker, the President's cabinet.
They are three of the most powerful officials in government. Director of Science and Technology Policy, Arati Prabhakar, a former Silicon Valley executive and once head of DARPA, the main research arm for the Defense Department.
DARPA's objective is a new generation of technology for national security.
Ambassador Katherine Tai, the U.S. trade rep and former World Trade Organization lawyer.
We have been very, very clear about the sobriety with which we approach the U.S.-China trade and economic relationship.
And Acting Secretary of Labor Julie Su, who won a landmark case as a young lawyer fighting for the rights of sweatshop workers.
I've done my best to use my power to be a voice for immigrant workers and to give them access so their own voices can be heard.
3 AANHPI women, along with Vice President Kamala Harris, breaking barriers in a historically diverse presidential cabinet.
People who come from communities that haven't had traditional access to positions of influence and opportunity. When you do end up in these types of positions, you're really tough. You've been really tested. And so that's one thing I want to reflect on the colleagues that I have here with me. Tough ladies.
It's a toughness they say was fine-tuned as immigrants or children of immigrants.
You've talked about how your mother worked 2 minimum wage jobs, how the union was so important to her life. How do you think that's shaped what you're doing here in the Labor Department?
I grew up translating for my parents the way so many immigrant children do, and that experience had a really profound effect on my sense of belonging, on the importance of language. And so I went to law school to become a translator in the language of law for people who were marginalized, discriminated against, and exploited.
My story started as just a classic immigrant kid in an Indian household where my mom started sentences with "when you get your PhD," and she wasn't joking. And so I found myself in the middle of graduate school at Caltech. I was getting an applied physics PhD, and all of a sudden I realized that I actually wanted to work on things that change the way the future unfolds, and I wanted a place to be able to do that. Years ago, someone said to me, "You don't. It feels like you never got the memo about what women should and shouldn't do."
Exactly.
And I just laughed and I said, "My mom never even knew there was a memo."
The women were nominated after a push from AANHPI advocates for more Asian representation in Biden's cabinet. And they say they stood ready to serve.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Your job is to wrangle big tech in some way. You've talked about how we have to take AI and make sure that it reflects our values. What do you mean by that?
The president was very clear that it's the most consequential technology of our times. He defined our job as managing its risks so that we can seize its benefits. And I think keeping the promise and the peril in frame all the time has been the guiding approach.
Ambassador Tai, whose parents were born in China, says she uses her cultural awareness and legal prowess to negotiate with China.
You really need someone in these types of positions who know their stuff and who can really hone in on where the challenges are.
It's the difference in many ways of just talking tough versus knowing your stuff and knowing how to negotiate across.
That's right. Because a lot of the tough talk, if it's not actually connected to facts and evidence, take you into very dangerous territory very, very quickly.
There was a moment where a congressman said to you that you were too nice.
I personally think you're too nice a person to be in the job that you're in.
And that he felt sorry for you. Your response to him made waves.
I've never been faulted for being too nice.
You have too nice a smile.
I also don't need you to feel sorry for me. So please don't. I don't need your pity. I stand up for the American people, and when I speak, people listen because I represent the interests of the United States.
There is something really important about standing up for yourself, standing up for each other. Certainly in our community, the AANHPI community, we've been through really tough times, but I take so much inspiration from the fact that I see our community, which is a community of communities, standing up for ourselves and each other.
As I was walking down the portraits of the Secretaries of Labor, I saw Elaine Chao's portrait and reflected on this idea that the Asian American community is not just, one party or the other, that whether it's Nikki Haley or others, there are Asian Americans represented across the spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's one reason why the representation is so important. So we're sure that we're serving everybody.
One of my favorite quotes from Sandra Day O'Connor was that her happiest day on the Supreme Court was the day that Ruth Bader Ginsburg walked in. These are two women who came from very different parts of the political spectrum to try to find unity and cohesion. And in many ways, you have created a little bit of a sisterhood yourself. You're helping each other.
When Arati arrived in the cabinet, Arati, you may not know this, but we celebrated at USTR. I was so delighted when you were confirmed, because then there were two of us, ordinary members of the cabinet, representing our community. And when Julie was nominated in the spring of last year, I felt such incredible pride.
Well, can I say, I love the word sisterhood, because I feel that from her, I feel that from us, someone who looks out for you, someone who's got your back.
A sisterhood they hope will keep breaking barriers.
We know we're not done. We know we've got more work to do. But when this becomes not notable, when you don't have to be the pioneer and the groundbreaker, then that's the progress we've made.